Hey there, everyone. It's time for some bonus fifth quarter coverage. I'm Ashlea Bullington. This is the producer of Chevrolet's Inside High School Sports, Robert Sheik. And Robert, realignment happened today.
Yeah, busy morning down in the greater Houston area. Some things shifted around a little bit. Not as much maybe as we've seen in years past, but definitely some changes on the landscape that are definitely worth talking about. So let's dive into it.
Yeah, so the big one that we had both kind of talked about a little bit was the Klein ISD and Conroe ISD. Now we're in Region 2.
Yeah, that was District 15-6A the last 2 years. Might have been the toughest district, especially from a football side, but even very competitive on the basketball side of things the last 2 years, where you had both the Conroe ISD schools, the Woodlands, College Park, Conroe High, Oak Ridge, those schools adding in with the 5 Klein ISD schools. And now those two have been split apart. So we'll kind of go through it numerically here. Looking at District 13 in Region 2, you have, now that Conroe Grand Oaks is a new school, I think that was kind of the big part of having to split those schools apart. So we won't get that monster Klein Collins, the Woodlands game anymore. But so you have Conroe Grand Oaks now joining this district with all the other Conroe ISD schools, and then Willis is kind of the sixth team in there to round out the district. So Willis moving up from 5A to 6A is big news for Willis. And then you have all those Klein ISD schools. They stay in District 15-6A. Klein, Klein Cain, Klein Collins, Klein Forest, Klein Oak. And then joining them are the Tomball ISD schools. Tomball Memorial played 6A last year and went a couple rounds deep. But Tomball High now moves up from 5A to 6A. So a big jump up for the Cougars and into a pretty tough district. We already saw what Klein Cain was capable of doing on the football field this past season.
They were so good.
Klein missed the playoffs this year, but that was really just because it was in such a tough district. It's a good, solid program there. Obviously Klein Oak had a huge season, went 3 or 4 rounds deep in the playoffs. Tomball Memorial had a nice season. Okay, and then we kind of skipped over District 14-6A there for a second. That's basically what was District 16-6A the last 2 years with your Westfields, your Springs, your Decaneys, the Aldine ISD schools. So that's really pretty much unchanged right there. And then District 16-6A is kind of what was 14-6A the last 2 years, with mostly it's now all Cy-Fair ISD schools. There were a couple of outside schools in the last couple of years. Bryan High was in that district, Tomball Memorial, as I mentioned. So now both of those schools have gone elsewhere, and Cy Falls actually moved from 17-6A now into 16-6A. So, but it is nice to see 8 of those Cy-Fair ISD schools together, and then as we start to look into Region 3, 4 Cy-Fair ISD schools there are now with some Spring Branch ISD schools. So that's a fairly similar district to what we've seen the last 2 years, just no Cy Falls in that district anymore.
So not a ton of mix-up. I know up in DFW they had a huge amount, but not a ton of mix-up, but still some really good competition between these schools. But kind of what looks like the District of Doom is that 21-6A in Region 3.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive to say the least. North Shore and Atascocita were in the same district a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago, I want to say, a couple of realignment cycles ago. They're back. They're reunited, and it probably doesn't feel so good, especially not for the other teams in that district.
I mean, that whole district, though, is stacked, top to bottom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Beaumont Westbrook, coming in from the east to Beaumont Westbrook played for the Division II state title 2 years ago. Obviously we know what North Shore's done the last couple of seasons, and North Shore had to beat Atascocita in the regional final this year. And then you have other solid programs like Kingwood, Summer Creek, CE King. These are programs that are capable of making the postseason as well. Humble went 9-1 in the regular season this past year. So, that's going to be a tough district. It's unfortunate. Some of those good teams are not going to make the playoffs.
I was going to say, there's a couple of teams in that district that are just dropping a few under their breath. Like, dang it, how did we end up here?
Yeah, no question. Like CE King, is not in a school district with any of those other programs, and I'm sure they were thinking, well, maybe we can avoid the Humble ISD schools or North Shore, but no, CE King is thrown right into that lion's den. So, kind of looking else through 6A Region 3 real quick. District 18 remains the same, all HISD schools. District 19 remains pretty much the same, all Katy ISD schools. One change in District 20 worth noting, George Ranch slides over, and that's we'll kind of get into why in a second. George Ranch slides over with all the Fort Bend ISD schools. That's kind of interesting to me. Richmond and is obviously in Fort Bend County, so it makes sense from a geographical standpoint. But we had seen the Fort Bend ISD schools just by themselves in years past. And then I know we want to talk about District 23.
Yes, Shadow Creek is no longer in 5A. The reigning state champions, after only 2 years of existence, are now in 6A.
So the Sharks technically, I guess, won't get to defend their 5A Division I state title.
That's okay. You can say you've never lost in 5A.
Exactly. That's a very good point.
You're the continued reigning 5A champions.
And that'll be an interesting district moving into 23-6A with the Pearland ISD schools, Pearland and Pearland Dawson. Also the A-Leaf ISD schools, Elsick, Hastings, and Taylor. And then the fellow Alvin ISD school, Alvin High. And then the kind of eighth program to fill it out is Strake Jesuit. Strake's been in that district the last couple of years. Strake will sometimes get moved around as one of the few private schools in the UIL, but Strake stays in that district. That'll be a very difficult district for sure. One of those A-Leaf ISD schools always seems to step up every year and have a really big season. Obviously both the Pearland schools, Strake, and Shadow Creek. That's going to be a tough road to survive that district for sure.
There's some 5A teams wiping their brow.
Yeah.
Now that they're going to have a chance to actually compete again.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that pretty much rounds out 6A in the region. In District 24, 6A is pretty much the same. The one notable change is that Brazoswood basically swaps places with Alvin High. Alvin High had been in District 24 with all the League City ISD schools, Dickinson, Clearbrook, those types. Basically now Brazoswood is in that district, and Alvin switches over to that difficult 23-6A.
So in 5A, we actually had some more movement to Manville and Katy Peyto are both in 5A Division I now instead of 5A D2.
Yeah, so both those programs take the jump up. We have seen Manville play 5A Division I before, obviously. Now the Mavs are back and kind of replacing, if you will, Shadow Creek in that district. 10-5A Division I was really probably the toughest top-to-bottom district in the greater Houston area the last 2 seasons. And it doesn't look like it's going to get a whole lot easier. One notable thing about that, though, Friendswood and Galveston Ball were in that district the last couple of years, and I think both missed the playoffs this past year. Both of those teams get a little sigh of relief. They get to move to District 9 5A Division I. LaPorte, we didn't mention in 6A, LaPorte drops down to 5A Division I. So LaPorte will be in that district with Friendswood and Galveston Ball. But yeah, 10-5A. We talked about it last year. I mean, you just look at these programs. Angleton, Fort Bend Hightower, Kempner drops down from 6A. Kempner might be a little better this year. Obviously, Peyto is a big program on the rise there in Katy ISD. Manville, Foster, we know what Foster does seemingly every single year. And Rosenberg Terry, is always a program that, can always jump up and bite you, and has been a strong program in the past. So
I'm gonna miss that Fort Bend Marshall Manville game though.
I know.
Let's keep the rivalry going.
I know that is going to be sad to see. Fort Bend Marshall stays in 5A Division II, and that district's a little bit easier now for Marshall. Not that the Buffs need it, because Coach Williams has that program rolling. But a lot of interesting movement. Kind of all across the Houston area.
Most definitely. And we will talk about this more in the coming weeks of the summer, especially next season when football starts. I feel like it's tomorrow that it's happening.
They'll start making schedules.
Goodness.
You know, they've already started making schedules. So yeah, the 2020 high school football season will be here before you know it.
And we'll have schedules and all that kind of stuff when they come out. But
Absolutely.
until then, I'm Ashlea, Robert Sheik. Thank you so much for watching the bonus coverage of the fifth quarter.